Since the Spaceballs franchise is coming back with a sequel, today's draft, NFL players we'd love to see come back from retirement. And it doesn't have to be recently retired. It can be anybody. This is our own whimsy, our own fantasy. Guys that we would love to see back on the football field again. Let's have some fun. Michael, who you got?
Now, before I go way back, I am going to go to a recent example. And maybe, Mike, it's because I'm watching the NBA Finals and the team I'm rooting for, the Indiana Pacers, is having some success. So how about Andrew Luck? Andrew Luck retired at 27 years old, and still Luck is 5 years younger than Joe Flacco. So he's 35. General manager at Stanford, I'm in Stanford, but he was a general manager. He's a general manager at Stanford. I think he'd be pretty good still. So I'd like to see Andrew Luck come back and do his thing.
Yeah, in theory, he still could return. It's only been 6 years. He's young enough to play. There are guys from his draft class that are still in the NFL, specifically Russell Wilson and Kirk Cousins. So it's not crazy. I'm erring more on the side of guys where it's pie in the sky. There's no way they could come back. Now, I need a ruling. Does the person have to still be, on the right side of the ground? Is that, or are we reanimating anyone here?
You said it. You can. It's the movie.
Okay.
It's the movies. You can do whatever. You can make it work.
Because coming back from retirement and coming back from the dead are two different things. I am going to begin, though, with probably my all-time favorite player at any era, at any time, even though it never resulted in even a Super Bowl appearance, but West Virginia's own Randy Moss. I would love nothing more than to see a guy on the field who sparked the constant threat. I mean, I know that Jamar Chase is Jamar Chase. I know Justin Jefferson. And Justin Jefferson is putting up better numbers than Randy Moss ever did. And he runs all the like he does it all, checks every box. And he's a great guy. There's nothing surly about it, but that was part of everything about Moss was special. He had just enough of that surliness. He had just enough of that edge. And it was like any given play would be that lightning strike 60-yard bomb that Moss would somehow find a way to contort his body to go make the catch. That day, the stat line from the Thanksgiving Day game is rookie year: 3 catches, 150-plus yards, 3 touchdowns. It's like, I don't care how good the best receivers in today's NFL are. Tyreek Hill in his prime. I mentioned Jefferson. I mentioned Chase. There's none of them that is like Moss from the standpoint of you had to constantly be on guard for the next play being the play that breaks your back. That was always there anytime Moss was on the field. It was special. It was magical. And again, he was just on the edge of surly enough. And he was enough of a character that he's just the whole experience. I miss him on the field more than I've ever missed any player.
And the way he ran, and I know that there was criticism of Randy Moss. It was always, well, he takes plays off. And there were times he even told us that he took plays off, and the reason why he was not happy with the situation when he was with the Raiders. But when you saw him run, I think a lot of people were deceived because it looked like he wasn't running that fast. Then all of a sudden, he's by you. Ask Rodney Harrison about Randy Moss, and they played the first game of it probably was a 2003 or 2004 season, somewhere in there. And Moss, it was the only highlight of the game. Moss was with the Raiders at the time, and he scored a touchdown. And the Patriots defenders were saying, you look at him and you think you have him under control, and you see this gazelle just running, and he's within your grasp, and then all of a sudden, you've got no chance of catching him. He would do that all the time. It looked like he wasn't giving full effort, but he was blazing. It's just what an entertaining, fun player to watch.
And I was thinking of one last thing, and now the thought is gone. Oh, well, that happens sometimes at this age. All right, you're up next.
Well, since you're going with generational talents and guys who changed the game. How about LT? We heard LT in the news here because Abdul Carter wanted to wear his number and then wanted to wear Phil Simms' number. But there's a reason LT still stands out in the culture because he was so dominant and blocking schemes were changed because of what he was able to do, an MVP defender. So I would just love to see LT in this environment where we know more about pass rushers and we pay more attention to them. I'd love to see what he would do in today's game.
Yeah, because, again, he's another guy whose dominance relative to everyone else, just like Moss, it feels like there hasn't been another one like him, where there's something different about this human being than everyone else around him. And you know, like everything else, we don't appreciate it while it's happening. And maybe we don't appreciate Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, and Joe Burrow as much as we should, and we probably don't. But LT was just one of those rare guys where there hasn't been another one. And the off-field and the character stuff, and just character, I mean character like he was a character.
Yeah.
But there was also some stuff that was unfortunate, but still, LT was one of a kind.
Don't you love the LT story that he went to the meeting and he went to a meeting in handcuffs, but it had nothing to do with the law?
Hey,
I love that.
I know.
One.
Yes. For my 56th birthday, Chris Simms arranged for him to send me a signed jersey, and it's one of my most prized possessions. And I still need to find the right frame to put it in. It's hanging in my closet. It's been hanging there for 4 years. And I mean, he's just writing and he's writing and writing. And you know how he signs things? Do you know what he puts at the end? Can I say it? I probably can't say it. Oh, it's our last day for 6 weeks. No, I can't say it. I can't bring myself to say it. No. Gary says no.
Gary Carter says no.
He says at the very bottom.
Pleading, no, please, Mike,
at the very
no.
bottom, it says a bad mother trucker.
Yeah.
But he doesn't say trucker. And it's awesome. And that's where am I going to put this thing? I got to frame it. It's not like you can put it right inside your I want to put it on my front door of my house. But yeah, probably inappropriate language, but that makes it even more awesome. Next one for me, and his name came up when we were talking about the Dolphins, Dan Marino. Where have you gone, Dan Marino? What would Dan Marino, the guy who was the only 5,000-yard passer for 40 years, not 40, it was 30 years, and now it's like this guy's throwing for 5, that guy's throwing for 5,000. 5,000 is no big deal now. Dan Marino, before the passing games really flourished like it has. Now, he arrived after the rules began to change to make it more conducive to throw the ball, but could you imagine what Dan Marino would do in today's NFL with that lightning release? And he had some of that edge. He had some of that attitude, Pittsburgh guy. We talked earlier in the week how the Steelers, for fear of having an awkward situation between Terry Bradshaw and Dan Marino, didn't take Marino in 1983 as he was slipping through round one. What an alternate reality that would be if Dan Marino had played for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So I'd love to see a guy like Marino, and especially now because the most successful quarterbacks are the guys who can move and extend plays. Marino was never a guy that was going to move all that much. He didn't need to.
But he could
just
flick
get the ball, and he would let it fly.
It's so funny that you would bring up the Steelers and Marino, and I guess Marino wrote them. Wasn't that the story? He wrote to the Steelers, Pittsburgh kid, begging them to draft him. And they drafted what? Did they draft Gabe Rivera instead?
Gabe Rivera.
Yeah.
I don't think he ever played for them.
Yeah, he got the accident.
He did for a year maybe. He was in a horrible accident.
So, but I was thinking about this, and before I give you my draft pick, I'll just tell you, I think I'm going to let the Steelers off the hook a little bit on Dan Marino because I don't know why I was going down this rabbit hole and I was looking at the stats, the college stats of Dan Marino. So his senior year, his last year, maybe it was his junior year at Pitt, 17 touchdowns, 22 interceptions. That was his last year. 17 touchdowns, 22 picks.
Wow.
So it's kind of tough to say, oh yeah, that's our guy. But it turned out they should have drafted Marino. By
the way, Gabe Rivera played 6 games for the Steelers in 1983. His accident happened after the 83 season.
So 6 games. I'm going to cheat on this one, Mike, since we're making up our own rules, and I'm going to draft 2 guys, same organization, because now this organization has become functional, and they weren't for generations. And that's the Detroit Lions. I want Calvin Johnson and Barry Sanders. I want them playing for the good Lions, not the Lions that forced them off into retirement. So I want to see both of those guys do their thing. And I want to bring, and I'm going to draft Ben Johnson away from the Bears back to the Lions as offensive coordinator, who gets to play around with Amon-Ra St. Brown and Calvin Johnson and Barry Sanders.
When Barry Sanders retired abruptly in 1999, there was a period for the next 3 or 4 years where could he come back? Would he come back? Will he come back? And that kind of lingered a little bit with Calvin Johnson, but not that much. And he's only 39. And I think what happened was, like, he want to go play for a contender and they wouldn't let him. I think he said some things to that effect. And I just feel like both of those guys decided they'd had enough of the Lions. They just had enough, that they were beaten down. And I don't think it's a coincidence that Barry Sanders decided he'd had enough after the Vikings went 15-1 with Randy Moss, and he saw what the future in that division was going to be. Now, it didn't last quite as long as it could have because they traded him after the 2004 season. But when you're on the front end of this legendary player's career who's going to transform the Vikings and ultimately didn't deliver a Super Bowl appearance, but still, I could see that being a factor for Barry Sanders, thinking, man, this world has changed. This is different. This is not the NFL I came into in 1989. I'm out. So that's a great pick. And, yeah, it's a shame that now that the Lions are good, two of the best players they ever had couldn't enjoy it. You've inspired me. You've inspired me. I was going to say Rodney Harrison. You mentioned him earlier. I'd love to see Rodney try to survive in today's NFL with the enhanced sensitivity to safety and the strike zone that's been created for quarterbacks. And just, I don't know that Rodney would make it more than a month without being suspended. How about, as we're getting ready for Arch Manning to come to the NFL at some point, what about Archie Manning in an alternate reality where he wasn't stuck with the Saints?
Oh, good one.
How good could Archie Manning have been? How good could he be if he got to come back and play in today's NFL? We know how good his sons were. His sons had better careers than he did, but he got stuck with the freaking Saints. My son and I were talking about this last night, how Eli got away from the Chargers. Eli went there, and Eli wasn't sure, do they really want me? There was conflict between the coach and the GM, and Archie was the one who kind of stood up and took the heat for Eli, even though Eli's the one that didn't want to be there. Yeah, what could Archie Manning have been? And wouldn't it be something to see Archie Manning coming out of Ole Miss right now into the NFL? We're going to kind of get to see it with Arch, but I feel like maybe football was robbed of a guy who could have been a great quarterback, but he was stuck with a horrible team.
Awesome pick. And I'll just say quickly, think about what that was like to be stuck with a team in the 60s and 70s. You really are. There's no free agency. There wasn't even Plan B free agency in the 60s and 70s, and that was the fake free agency, let alone just the free market. You can go wherever you want and just sign the best deal for yourself. If you get drafted to a bad team, you're really in a bad situation unless you have a visionary general manager who can turn things around through the draft. Otherwise, you wind up being Archie Manning.
Plan B free agency. Now, nothing that's ever called Plan B is going to be good, but Plan B free agency was you had a certain number of guys every year whose contracts expired. You could protect a certain number of them from becoming
pretty much
free
the
agents.
whole team. You can protect anyone you want.
and it was this handful of guys whose contracts had expired that you probably weren't going to bring back anyway, and they became Plan B free agents. That was a thing from like 88 to 93, because that was the reaction. The aftermath of the 87 strike, Michael, the union shut down and sued the NFL, claiming that any and all collective rules for free agency, the draft, etc., were antitrust violations. And the CBA that was put in place in 93 was the settlement of that lawsuit. So one of the ways that the NFL tried to justify their collusion and their antitrust violations was this clumsy, clunky Plan B free agency. That's your history lesson for the day. Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.